Hello, it is Talk About It Tuesday, and today on Renegade Trucker Show we're going to be talking about two articles. One of those is from OIDA, and it's talking about opposing Senator Isaacton's push for putting speed limiters on all of our trucks. This was successfully inserted into this bill. We don't know if it's going to pass or not yet, but it is a really big deal. We don't know what the final fate of this bill is going to be, but this is something that we need to oppose vigorously. And Senator Isaacton, I'm going to address a lot of this video to you because I spend a lot of time down in Georgia as a trucker. I'm in Wyoming at the moment. I live in Montana. But in my trucking career, I have spent a whole lot of time in Georgia. I used to lease to Yellowstone Trucking out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Yellowstone Trucking was the principal contractor for Boeing, and we had a regular run we did down there that went from Long Beach, California to Macon, Georgia when they were building the C-141 Starlifters down there. So I'm very familiar with Georgia. I'm very familiar with the problems we have down there. And you're right, the trucking situation down there is very difficult right now. People in Georgia are faced with having a lot of trucks on the road. Some of those trucks behave very badly. However, punishing every one of us for the bad actions of a few, it's not cool, it's not right. That's not the American way. In fact, that's one of the most un-American things we can do, is to punish someone for the acts of someone else, and that's not supposed to be the way that our country works. And putting speed limiters on trucks, especially like in my case, I own this truck. This is my truck. This is not the company's truck. I own for this truck. I pay $5,000 a month almost in payments on this truck so I can own and operate this truck myself. It's my truck. It's not your property. And I should not be getting punished for the bad actions of others. And in fact, you're endangering my safety by saying that we have to have that. Here's the thing with a speed limiter, is you see these videos online of these trucks getting into multiple accidents. Well, the reason those trucks are getting into these huge blow-up accidents on the interstate is because all these trucks already have speed limiters on them. These trucks, these company trucks that are in these giant fleets like Swift, Schneider, CR England, JB Hunt, all those fleets out there, their trucks are already limited. Most of them 62, 65 miles an hour, somewhere in there, some a little more, some a little less. These trucks already have speed limiters. So what happens is drivers that drive these trucks, they get mentally trained to hold their foot flat on the floor, because a lot of times if you hold your foot flat on the floor, you can get a mile or two an hour faster than you can if you just set the cruise. So they're used to running these trucks just as fast and as hard as they can. So when the weather situation deteriorates, what happens is these trucks, they're driving flat on the floor hard into the storm because that's what they've been trained to do. These drivers have not been trained to drive for the road conditions. They've been trained, they've been mentally conditioned to drive against the speed limiter. So because of that, speed limiters, in my opinion, are very dangerous. And if this bill goes through, if this passes, we're just going to see more carnage on the highway. That's all it's going to lead to, because there's certain situations, and I know that probably being from Georgia you don't think about this, but there are certain situations where you need to be able to go faster. For instance, out here in the Great West, we have a lot of two-lane roads. You do a lot of two-lane trucking out here, and sometimes on the two-lane you need to get around another slow-moving vehicle, especially this time of year. You have RVs all over the road, and you have to pass these RVs because a lot of these RVs, they'll only run 50, 48 miles an hour. And when you have schedules to keep and when you have deadlines to meet, you need to get around those trucks. So what you're going to have happen now is you're going to have trucks that go to pass these RVs that are full of families out on vacation, and they're not going to be able to get around them before the oncoming traffic comes, because what will happen is they'll be coming around and they'll be pushing it to get around that RV. The speed limiter will kick in, and the people in the RV don't know any better to back out of it and let the truck back over. And what will happen is you'll either have the truck force the RV off the road, or you'll have a head-on collision, and it's going to be a really bad deal. This is the type of stuff that already happens, but it's going to get a lot worse if we put speed limiters in the trucks, and that's just the way it is. I will agree something needs to be done about safety, especially down in Georgia. You guys have a lot of problems down there. The problems you have in Georgia are based completely around the fact that there's not enough parking. There are not enough facilities for trucks in the area because they just haven't built enough truck stops for the amount of people, the amount of traffic that comes through there. The East Coast, the whole of the East Coast, is terrible for this, and it really doesn't start to get better until you get west of the Mississippi. Anytime you get east of the Mississippi, you know that anytime late at night you're not going to be able to find parking. Finding parking earlier in the evening is difficult as it is. And so what this does is this puts a lot of undue pressure on truck drivers, where they have to get out there and they have to push it really hard to get to where they need to be so they can be guaranteed to get a parking spot, so they can get a hot meal and get a shower. And that's not cool. And so what we really need to do is we need to find more places so that truckers can have more truck parking, and we need to not mess up the rule hours of service, because that's another problem here. I know that that's a big thing that's coming through right now, where they're talking about the restart provision, and the 34-hour restart's great until you start with the whole let's take 2 periods between service certain times. That stuff doesn't work because not everybody operates at that hours. And actually, you want to encourage some drivers to operate at night, because what that does is that lessens the traffic on the road during the day. And we need more flexibility in the hours of service. And if we have more flexibility in the hours of service, that means that drivers will have the option of not driving at peak traffic times. You shouldn't have trucks on the road during rush hour. We need to change the hours of service so that a trucker can stop and rest and take a nap during these times instead of being out in traffic. And what we'll see is an increase in safety for that. Speed limiters, really all they are is they're an attempt at using technology, much like EOBRs, which are going to do absolutely nothing to further safety. In fact, they're only going to make it worse, because it's already been proven that running an EOBR stresses drivers out, because it's like having a time clock. It's like having a countdown clock that punishes you if something goes wrong. It's like being on a game show. It gives someone a sense of anxiety all day long, having that clock counting down at you. And I ran one at one of the companies I was at, and I'll never run one again, which I don't have to, because this truck has a build date of November of '99, so I just barely made it in there past it, so I don't have to worry about that. But I actually did not buy, I was going to buy a new truck earlier this year, and I did not buy a new truck because of the fact that I no longer had to run an EOBR with this truck. And so Kenworth lost a $200,000 sale because of that, because I'm not buying a brand new truck. The whole point I'm getting at here, though, is that technology cannot replace passion. It cannot replace passion for your job. And we have an issue within the industry right now that's something that I've begun to call the lowest common denominator. And what the lowest common denominator is it's the business practices being used by several of these large carriers, where they operate on a revolving door, where they take people, they give them the minimum amount of training required, they turn them into a truck driver, they get them their CDL, they put them out on the road for just enough time to make them a significant amount of money, and then they run them out the door and start with the next batch of drivers. And that prevents these people from getting the experience they need. It prevents them from becoming safe truck drivers. It's built on a revolving door to keep wages artificially low. And unfortunately, the government plays a big part in this by giving out grants and things like that to these companies and to these people. And so literally, we're spending our tax dollars to make the highways less safe with this type of stuff. And if you look at the statistics, I believe it was 101% driver turnover last quarter. I can't remember off that exact number for sure. But when you're dealing with about 101% driver turnover, this is why, is because people come to these companies, they're run for 6 to 10 months, and then they're out the door again, and they actually leave there owing the company money. And so the company's collecting on both ends. They're getting paid to train the people, they're getting paid to run the people in the truck, and then when the people are not able to pay them in full, they throw other fines, fees, everything else on top of that. So they're just making money all the way around, and what's happening is our highways are becoming less safe for it. So what we really need is we need professional truck drivers to be treated like professionals. It's not right to discriminate against every one of us because of the bad actions of a few. And these companies will take practically anyone they can get through the door and stick them in a truck, and that's wrong, because a lot of these people have no business being a truck driver. A lot of these people are not going to be safe as a truck driver. A lot of these people are scared of driving in the winter. A lot of these people have no relevant experience. And not to say that some of them could not become perfectly good truck drivers, but with the training situation the way it is today, it's not going to happen. They're going to get used up and they're going to get spit out. And I'm not saying that these are bad people by any means. These are people that are getting taken advantage of simply because they don't know any better. And so we shouldn't be allowing that to happen. And really all the speed limiters is playing into the hands of these big companies, saying, oh, well, we do this to make our fleet more safe. No, they don't. Really, the reason the big companies want the speed limiters is they speed limit all their trucks. And it's all about fuel mileage. It's all about keeping costs down, because the faster a truck goes, the more fuel it uses. So they speed limit all their trucks. And because they keep their fleets tied down to a certain amount of speed, what they want to now put everybody into that same thing so that no one else can compete. It's all about stifling competition. This has nothing to do with safety. It's all about denying competition from everybody else out there, and what's going to happen in the process is the industry is going to become less safe, because you look at these massive pileups that are happening out there on the interstate. Who's involved in this? It's not guys driving the W9s, and it's not guys in the 379s. It's guys in these plastic trucks working for the big companies. That's exactly who it is. And so we need more oversight, and we need more review into these companies, and absolutely there's a lot we could do to make this industry more safe. And I don't want this to come across as I'm just trying to beat you up, but I don't think that the whole speed limiter thing was really looked into, because if you really would have come and got our opinion from the industry, and you would have talked to the experienced truckers and got our advice, I think you'd have found so many things that are so much more productive. And so here's what I'm prepared to do, is I'm headed to Georgia next week. If someone from your office wants to contact me, and if you're going to be in Georgia, I'll be happy to meet up with you. I'll sit down and I'll talk to you. If not, if you guys would just like to talk to me on the phone, I'll be more than happy to do that. I've been out in this industry for a long time. I've been driving since 2003. And I've had a really awesome career in the trucking industry. I've got to see and do a lot of things, and I have never had an at-fault accident in all the time that I've been out here. So I've been very lucky, I've been very fortunate, and I am a very safe driver, and I take pride in what I do. And that's what we really need, is we need to build this industry more towards people that are going to take pride in what they do in the industry, not just whoever we can get in the door for the least amount of money, stick out on the road, use up and kick out and on to the next guy. And what I want to add to this is, I'm a U.S. Navy veteran. I served from 99 to 03, and my military career was cut short because of a very bad car accident. I had the whole front of my face smashed. I was in a very bad situation. It totally ended my military career. So 2003, everybody was going off to Afghanistan, Iraq. I was getting put out of the Navy because of it. And I fought very hard to try and stay in, but I understand firsthand, because of what happened to me, how bad and how horrible of a thing it is that can happen when you have a massive car accident. I've been through that process. I've been through it twice, in 2000, then again in 2011. I was rear-ended by a guy. I was doing 65 miles an hour on the interstate. He hit me from behind doing over 100 miles an hour, messed my back up really bad. And that's something I still really struggle with, those injuries to this day. And so no one is more aware of it than I am. And in my driving career, I've been very cognizant of that. And because of that, safety on the highway and improving safety out here is very important to me. And as a matter of fact, improving the image of the industry as a whole, because a lot of people that are in this industry, that stay in this industry for more than a couple of years, are very passionate. We're out here because we love it. We love this way of life. We love to be able to travel and the things we get to do and see. It's not, we didn't become truck drivers because we couldn't do anything else. I'm a very talented guy. There's a lot of things I could be doing. I'm a welder, I'm a machinist, I know a lot about electronics, but I'm choosing to be out here because this is what I wanted to do. I want to be able to travel. I like the lifestyle of trucking, and it's been one of the few things I've been able to stay with just because I love it so much. And so I wanted to really nail on that safety is very important, and it is to many professional drivers. The thing that, when we're talking to each other, the thing that we'll always say to each other is, hey, stay safe out there. That's usually the way we end our conversations with each other. Or have a safe ride going that way is another way when we're talking on the CB. And that's something to really consider, that we are very safety minded out here. And unfortunately, the government, in their attempts to make things more safer, has made it difficult for us to do our jobs, and even more so difficult to do it safely. One thing that I can really hammer on, and that is like the 14-hour rule. The 14-hour rule is just stupidity. It sucks, because what happens is let's say that I take my 10 hours off like I'm supposed to, and for whatever reason, it could be that I'm out here in Wyoming and the wind's blowing 100 miles an hour and the truck is shaking back and forth, and it just keeps you awake all night long, and you don't get a very good night's sleep, but you've got to go, you've got a load to go move. And so you get in the truck in the morning, you start driving, and by the afternoon you're getting really tired. You shouldn't be in the situation where you have to choose between getting more sleep or making money. That's just absolutely wrong, but that's exactly what the 14-hour rule does. The same thing with the way they changed up the split sleeper berth provisions, and I know why they did it, why they changed it up the way they did, is because once you had the ability to split your time any way you wanted to, as minimum block of 2 hours, once you could take that 2 and 8, or you could take a 5 and a 5, or a 4 and a 6, you could do it any way you wanted to. All of a sudden now, people stop getting out of service violations. They stopped getting the violations. It was about the ability to write tickets, not about safety, and I understand that. The whole reason they changed the sleeper berth rules has nothing to do with safety. What it's entirely about, in my opinion anyways, is I think it's because when we got the split sleeper berth, where you could split it any way you want to back in 2003, that meant that we could do our jobs and do it very effectively, and that gave us the ability to sleep when we needed to, because I used to use that rule all the time and I loved it, and I was able to stay well rested, I was able to drive harder, I made more miles because I was able to stop when I got tired and extend that clock. And taking that away, really the only purpose that I can see it serving is what it does is it makes it easier for the DOT to write tickets, and makes it where we can prosecute truckers for running out of their hours of service. Really, the way the hours of service are structured today, the only thing it does is it makes it harder for us to do our job, and it makes a driver more stressed out, because once you start that clock, you only have a certain amount of time in the day to get it done. It doesn't matter getting the rest, anything else, because you have to take a full 8-hour block. Well, if you're going to take a full 8-hour block, why don't you just take the full 10? And really what it's modeled around is the whole idea with these larger companies. What they want to be able to do is they actually do what's called an 8-3-3 split, where they have someone drive for 8 hours, that person takes 3 hours off while the other driver drives, and then they drive their other 3 hours while the other driver's off, and then they take the 8-hour break. And so by doing that 8-3-3 split, they can move that truck continuously. That's entirely something that was built for the big companies. It does no good to the independent driver for the most part. All it does really is hurt us. And so if we really want to talk about making the highways safer, let's talk about how we can amend the rules of service and make it where drivers can actually stop and not be faced with the decision of, do we get rest or do we go make money? It's that simple. And not only that, by doing that, what that'll mean is these peak times during traffic, when everybody's out on the road, it'll mean that a driver can stop and they can rest. Because if we can get more truck parking and we can get the ability to stop and rest during times that traffic is at its peak, what that means is that the highways will get safer, because if the trucks just aren't on the roads at peak traffic time, we're just going to have less accidents by default. Technology, as I said, isn't going to solve anything. What's going to solve things is people that are really passionate about this industry, putting passionate drivers in trucks to do the job, and making sure that we have the right rules of service to operate in, so as that we can do our jobs effectively and do our jobs legally.